Welcome everyone to Wizard World Virtual Experiences. I'm Jerry Milani, and we're trying to bring everything we have that we do at Wizard World shows to the Wizard World virtual stage. And that includes celebrities, and includes authors, and includes artists, and it includes video games. And today we're going to have a developer and a writer from a popular new video game. We'll be talking about that in just a minute, but want to remind you of some of the things that are coming up here on Wizard World Virtual Experiences over the next few days. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, 10 o'clock Pacific, we have Claudia Wells and James Tolkien from Back to the Future. That'll be a fun interview for folks who love that movie and that trilogy. Thursday at 4 o'clock Eastern, we have Legends of Rock and Roll, including the great Mary Wilson and CJ and Richie Ramone among the celebrity stars we're going to have in that Stars of Rock and Roll, Legends of Rock and Roll series. That's coming up on Thursday. Also on Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, it's the old movie Escape to Witch Mountain, a Disney film you might have remembered from the mid-'70s. We're going to have two of the child stars turned all grown up here on Friday at 1 o'clock. Wizard World Virtual Experiences. So today, whether you're watching on Twitter or on Twitch or on Facebook or on YouTube, go ahead into the chat rooms and ask some questions. We're actually got some video game codes to give away for copies of the PC version of this game. So make sure if you got some questions, put them in there. Also, wizardworldvirtual.com is the place for the entire Wizard World schedule, and Wizard World Vault is the place to go if you're looking for memorabilia and other items culled from 20 plus years of Wizard World experience of doing conventions all over across North America. And we're excited to be bringing you today just another element of our show. Video games has become such a big part of what we do at Wizard World. And we're really happy to have the opportunity today to speak to some folks who have really created what I think is a game that lots of people are going to enjoy, not just youth, but all the way up to age-old gamers. She's a novelist, a writer for video games, convention speaker, and author of the Holder's Dominion novel, a host of the podcast, The Storyteller Chatcast, and a frequent host and guest at Wizard World conventions. Please welcome the great GENESE Davis.
Hi, Jerry.
Hi, GENESE. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm nervous. I have butterflies. It's been too long.
Yes, I'm sure. You've never done this before.
Never.
Fine. Never hosted anything before.
Discount the 543 panels we've done together.
Forget about those. Yes. Well, it's so good to see you. And hopefully once again, soon we'll be able to meet you guys all in person again.
Fingers crossed.
He is a CEO and game designer of Exin Games, which he founded in Brussels in 2015, where he's coming from today. But he's been working on video games all the way back since 2010. He's self-taught in designing games, and he created Exin to make games like Afterloop and the game we're going to talk about today, which is Ari and the Secret of Seasons. Here is Sebastian TOUZE.
Hey, Jerry. Hey, GENESE also.
Hi, Seb.
I hope I didn't mangle your name too badly.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
The best I could. Well, GENESE and Sebastian, first of all, welcome to Wizard World Virtual Experiences.
Thank you.
Great to have you here today with us. And GENESE, welcome, of course, back to Wizard World. Fans have been to our Wizard World shows, have for sure run into GENESE at one point or another, either doing one of her own panels or hosting one of ours. I want to start by asking each of you to just talk about Ari and the Secret of Seasons, how you got involved with this particular game.
Seb, you go ahead.
Oh, well, the way I got involved in the game is I kind of created it. So I started quite early on in 2016, like mid 2016. And it was kind of a challenge that I had with other friends of doing a game where we could involve a season in it and have different location also at the same place at the same time. And yeah, I've tested some stuff, and at a certain point, I ended up by having something that was quite already interesting. Then, like 2 or 3 months later, I showed that at Gamescom in Germany, and also on Twitter, and had like a lot of retweet and a lot of within the tweet there that I was doing. So I knew that I had something that was quite interesting. So then, afterwards I was continuing on developing the game, especially developing the gameplay on the game. I had like quite a rough story within the game, and then afterwards, indeed, I had to add extra story within the game, and that's when we had writer joining in, and a writer like Janice, for instance.
Yeah, it was really actually amazing because when the producers reached out to me about reviewing the story of Ari, I was immediately intrigued because the foundation that Seb had established was really interesting, especially because the regions were all locked in one season. And I really started there when the producers and Seven, we all had a meeting and we're going over what story was established, what they wanted more, what depth they wanted more to the backstory, the ancient history of Valdi still needed to be figured out and painted. So that's really where I started. I started with the incredible game mechanic of the fact that you can use these season crystals to have these spheres that create whatever season you want. And first of all, Seb, bravo, because the fact that you had to create the environments all these different times for all the different seasons so that the player can see that zone transformed into each season. How did you, I don't know, engineers, artists, developers, designers, you're amazing. I was thrilled to be a part of it. But that's really what hooked me was when Seb described what the player could do with these season crystals, and then how we brainstormed and blue skied the fantastical idea of, okay, where did these stones come from? What was the original discoverer, if you will, of these things? And so actually, Seb and I had some really close knit jam sessions where we came up with this idea where as crazy as it sounds, but like this, you know, this meteor came to this planet and created this incredible crater that had these stones with this gravitational pull that pulled each season to it. And the lore that we developed ended up being, you know, like 100-page, you know, very in-depth, insightful lore doc. And that's what really got me excited about Ari, was just this incredible opportunity to paint such a fantastical version of how did this happen? How did each region get locked? And then what does Ari's part play in this, in the reversal of the seasons, how to figure out what happened? We had so much, Seb, didn't we, that we had to figure out how to get it in the game.
Yeah, it's actually funny because we really started with the gameplay first, so with the bubble of seasons, and we really had to design something around it. And I remember that when I presented the characters to Genese also, each characters didn't had any lore, any background, but they had a specific mindset, all of them. And on top of their kind of mindset with Genese and or gigs, for me it was around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. when I was working with Genese because of the time, the the time zone. But we were like going quite deep with every characters, and I mean, at first, like it was like, oh, this guy dressed in green, this one dressed in orange, and it ended up by having all of them stories that mingle together. And yeah, I think we built solid character that could exist in a certain way.
Exactly, like all of the art style was locked, but it was cool to be able to come up with the individual personalities, with Dagden being a collector and you know, an expert excavator, and Bryn being this, you know, tea, you know, fanatic, and really also it was fun coming up with Luctans, right, where he doesn't speak, and why did he, what upbringing did he have where, you know, he's super bashful but he's comfortable talking to Ari in his own language and the other two guardians.
That was quite a challenge actually, because they are all those two. I mean, especially Luktan, that is just grunting. We had to come up with the entire sentence to so it's still people can understand it.
So let me ask, to take a little bit of a step back. How do you determine what elements that Sebastian has created, Janice, how you're going to write to those? And did you come back to Sebastian and say, what if I wrote it this way? Were you able to go back and forth on things like that? And what might be an example?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, what's really cool, what I love especially about game development and writing for games, is I love trying to puzzle piece together the vision of the director and the design team. So when we first started working and he said, this is my vision, this is the theme and the foundation of the game, and then these are all of the places where we can flesh it out further, that to me, that's the most exciting challenge, right? Because there are parts of the game that are locked. There are game mechanics that are locked. There are things that you can't change, and then there are like little piece like Tetris, right? Where you can go, okay, well, there's this part of the game. She wheels this season here. And so how can I make that make sense with the lore? So what was your question about? You said, how did I?
Just connecting back, like if you had ideas of something that Sebastian maybe hadn't created yet, or that you had and you wanted to write into it, were you able to
right.
make
Okay,
those changes? Yeah,
for sure. So, like Prince Crocus, for example, perfect example. So Ari has a crush on Prince Crocus in the game, and he has this goal of becoming the legendary warrior. But Seb's like, hey, well, it's still open for discussion on why. So during one of our jam sessions, we came up with all of these different options of why would Prince Crocus want to step into a warrior role when he's privileged prince with royal parents that has, everything handed to him. And what's really fun about writing and being able to develop that backstory was we were able to interweave with another character, and I don't want to spoil it. We were able to interweave a connection between two of the main characters that as you play, three of the main characters that thank you, Seb, that as you play, if you take the time to gather all of the Equinox letters, read all the landmark tablets, do all of the side quests, it breadcrumbs you through the backstory of why Prince Crocus is doing what he's doing, why the Guardians have become kind of a goofy kind of elders that the community doesn't really rely on anymore. Why Gwen is in mourning, why I had to kind of asked Seb, what are our limitations? What can we run with? And Prince Crocus and Ari's parents and the Guardians was where he said, you can run with this. You can create any backstory you want and connect it with the parts of the games that are already established. So that's what I did.
Yeah, we had really the surface of the story and not the deep connection, and that's really what we created with GENESE to make a world that is more believable, actually.
Especially when it comes to the ancient timeline, which with I always wish that we could snap our fingers and magically make more places to put in more story, of course, being the writer. But with the ancient timeline, especially trying to describe, okay, Algernon the Wise is this, from generations ago, is the establisher of these landmark tablets, and he describes the importance of tradition and the Guardians and why you must carry these on. And then you go through the other avenues of the game, like the Equinox letters, of how did that come to be. So there's that's what's so cool about games, is that unlike a novel where you have to read page by page and imagine the whole thing yourself, with a game it feels like you're immersed in that deep part of a story, but you get the amazing enhancement of the visuals and the game mechanics to bring you to these powerful character moments.
and I think that leads us nicely into the next question. We have some viewers, first of all, who checked in from California, New York, Puerto Rico, Israel, France, and all over the world. People are tuning in. So we appreciate everyone at Wizard World Virtual Experiences checking into that. Questions from Ben Park, and he asks what the unique challenges you guys encountered in making the different visual environments, and I suppose in the writing also, but for the different seasons. How do you make sure you distinguish those?
You start, GENESE, or shall I start?
Go ahead, Seb.
Okay. So for the different season, it was quite challenging because we knew that the game had to go on different platforms, not only PC but on Nintendo Switch and PS4, which are like platforms that are less powerful than a up-to-date PC, for instance. And so we had to stay quite conservative with the technique we were using. And so not to enter too much into the detail of the work we've done to be able to show different season, we always try to have like different colors that are showing the different season, but also like the snow that arrive on top for the winter, and like particles for the rain or for the snow, or even for the spring where you have like little dandelion pieces that are floating around. I don't know if that entirely answered the question for the visual.
Yeah, I mean, do a lot of games have that where you have different seasons? I don't know that I've experienced that. How important was it? I mean, it's called
Well,
seasons are part
it's
of the name. So how important was that to you to get that?
so it was already existing games doing that, but that was like 2D games. So I think it was one of the Zelda for Game Boy that had a season changing into it. I actually never. I mean, I played the game since then because people told me about it, but I didn't play the game before starting Ari. And the way it was working, it was like the entire zone was fully changing into one season. In here, what is completely different is that it's like little sphere of environment. So it can like lead to very complex environment where you have the water that is just in a bowl of water, for instance. It looked like a mini aquarium, basically.
And for me, I really liked one of my favorite things that we worked on together was the NPC chatter for the different regions and for the changes of the season. So I ended up writing sentences for the NPCs to say when they're in their normal region, right? So in Lamastide, for example, they're in perpetual summer. Everyone's in, their board shorts and their bikinis, and they're ready to take to the ocean waves and surf or lay out. And so we have lines where they're enjoying the sun, enjoying the weather, and then when the seasons reverse and Ari comes to Lamastide and it's in winter. I love the designers, having the characters like they're freezing in their bathing suits, and they're like, how does Yule live in perpetual winter? This is terrible. I don't even own a winter coat. Like, what am I going to do? And I love that juxtaposition of someone who's lived in winter all their lives and they have to be in this sweltering heat of summer and they hate it. And you have the people in summer and now in winter. And then we wrote chatter for if Ari creates a bubble around that NPC, then that will change their behavior as well. And oh man, I so hope for sequels or additions, because we have so much more to give, to offer, that to enrich the environment of each change, not only in the normal, the reversal, but when Ari creates a sphere around them.
We had
just hold that bubble, Ari. Can you just hold that? I'm in summer and I'm happy, and the rest of the regions in winter.
we had quite. I mean, it was quite challenging actually, because the amount of writing we have for a simple indie games is quite massive. So yeah, I don't know. Do you know how many words we have in the game, Genese?
Oh, well, we have that ended up in the game. I can't recall exactly, but I know that our lore docs, we were at over 100,000 words. I mean, that we wanted to put into the game.
Yeah, when Modus saw the amount of words they had to translate, they had a mini heart attack.
Localization was hard. 14 languages, right, Seb?
No, I don't know actually. Let
12
me
or
go on Steam. Actually, I can tell you.
But Jerry, imagine, the challenge of, we created so much. I mean, not only the quest, but all of the UI, right? Everything that you read, from the names of the costumes, the names of the quests, to the descriptions. We have some pretty cute descriptions of the costumes and the quests and all of that they hope the players like. But all of the main storyline, all of the cutscenes, all of that, Seb and I reviewed and tried to fit in as much as we can, but it has to go through a dozen language, translations, which is that's a big ask for a
The-
small team.
there is a lot of stuff that got lost in translation actually, like a lot of jokes, especially for example with the spring golem with all the jokes. I mean, the whole conversation is just joking there, and I'm pretty sure that in the other language it hasn't been kept. It's not possible to translate it.
It's so hard. It's so hard
Yeah.
because that was, I think, Seb, that was one of our favorites, right? The tree golem is all sarcasm and he's all just jokes. And then in the opposite fashion, one of the quests that means a lot to Seb and I is the whale, right, Seb? Like the
Yeah.
fact that I remember you coming to me and saying, "Hey, I really want this quest to have a thread of grief, of sadness." And for a video game, that's always a challenge because you have a small amount of space to try to hit an impact or hit a moment with the player. So one of my strategies is to write the quest how I wish it could be, just in its full form of 3 pages or however long it is, and then we cut from there until we can fit it in, but still try to hit that moment of what the whale ends up, sacrificing, how Ari feels about that, how Ari wants to plead with a different decision. Can we go a different way? Can we make some change to stop that? And then how you feel when it does or does not work out. So that's a big challenge when working with games, but it's also, again, one of the things I love about it because it feels so validating when you can pair it with the music, with trend orchestra, right? Seb, the way that he brought the whale song and the whale sounds and then the words and the way that Ari responds with that interaction, I teared up. I'm gonna admit it. I played it and I teared up, even though I was part of the development.
Marcus, the composer, actually provided you the music before you have to write that part, right?
That's true. And honestly, that I'm trying to think back. That's the first time I was able to write a quest with the music that was going to be part of it during development. I mean, I've never been able to do that. Normally I'm brought onto the project, I have to write kind of blind, where the design team describes the quest to you, what they want to achieve, and then you just write to it in your imagination. But this was the first time I got to take Marcus's actual composed music, listen to it on my headphones just like this, and write to that emotion. And Seb, I remember sending it to you and I was just like, the tears in my eyes, like goosebumps, going, "You gotta read this! You gotta read this!" And it was magical.
So we had
Yeah.
some other great questions from Genie4 asking how long, you basically answered this already, Seb, how long it takes to complete an entire project from start to finish, but maybe, Janice, you can pitch into a little bit of it, of the time, from the time that you started, working with Sebastian until, it kind of wrapped up. What's the time frame and what is kind of the process there? You've spoken a little bit to it, but to answer her question, what's kind of the start and end time frame? I guess
Go
for
on,
each of
Janice.
you. Yeah.
Go ahead, Seb.
Okay. So for me, the time frame, it's kind of hard just to put an exact timing, but because the team grow up also gradually. Like the first year, it was just me, and then afterwards it was Kwambo, or 3D artist that joined. So we were like we were like 1 and 2 the first year, and then gradually we had like other people joining the team. So we went from mid 2016 to 2020. So it's like 3 years and a half. But yeah, the entire team grew up, and I think the peak was in 2019 when we had 10 people maximum.
Yeah, for me, when I joined the team in 2019, we worked together first on the cutscenes, actually.
Yeah.
Seb and I reviewed what the animators had created. Camille was so much fun to work with. Every time we were on a talk, she would have the best jokes. She always made me laugh. And so we reviewed, and again, that was like, it's like puzzle piecing together. Some of the game isn't even developed yet, so we have to imagine what will come, what we have, and then how we can write from there. And so that was when Seb and I really established the backstory of the three guardians of Ari, of Prince Crocus, and even Ronan the Messenger, which I'll brag about Seb a little bit. I took a little bit of his own real life history and put into some of Ronan the Messenger's jokes. So when you play, everyone, just know there is real life fodder in there of Seb's actual life in the fish market.
Yeah, the fisherman part, yes. The joke with Ronin was quite fun with the leaf.
Oh yeah, I watched
Yeah.
a streamer. Oh, I watched a streamer yesterday playing that part, and she laughed. There's a joke, Jerry, that Ronan the Messenger talks about all of his odd jobs. He's like he's the jack of all trades, and one of his jobs he describes a very very cute joke with the leaves. Or it was pretty funny.
Well, come on, tell us.
Seb, you go ahead. I'll blush.
Oh,
I'll blush.
go ahead.
He's talking about one of his odd jobs. No, Seb, you do it. I can't do it.
So Ronin had like a lot of different jobs. One of them was to be a fisherman. The other one was to bring juice to the guardians. Another one was to be a model for sculptures. And he explained to Ari why it stopped actually to do modeling for the sculptures. It was actually because they asked him to remove the leaf.
That's why I couldn't do it.
Placed leaf, yes.
And one of the players that Seb was describing, he's like, I don't get it. And Seb's like, just Google statues.
Where the leaf goes and where it goes. We have another question from Francois from France. He says something in French, then he translates it for us. The very beautiful work. And then he asks what your inspiration was, Seb, for the artistic style of the game. What kind of inspired you to have this style? We're seeing some of the video here, if you're watching on video, and just seeing this unique, beautiful style. What inspired you to come up with that?
It's inspired by a lot of different things. Partially all the travels that I've done across the world. In one of the video, you can see, for instance, one of the entrance of a temple is based on the treasures in Petra. I've been there myself, and I was blown away by the way it looked. And yeah, the entire game by itself is really inspired by travel stuff that I've done around. And also the Dome of Season is based on a church that is just nearby my place, basically.
Rated E10.
The Pumpkin Geek, who we know, has a question for GENESE. You work on a lot of, just in the intro, we talked about all the different things you do. Is it difficult for you to work on multiple projects at once? How are you able to kind of juggle all that?
Wow, that's a really great question. It's I would say it's definitely a challenge. I can't, there's no way to fuddle around that answer. I mean, it's a challenge, but what I have to do is I can't jump from project to project each day or each hour. I have to set aside at least 4 days or the whole week for each project so that I'm immersed in that world. Like, for example, when I'm writing Ari, I have to remember all the details of Valdi, of all the ancient history of each character's backstory, and why Bryn would say what he's about to say, why Dagdan has his jokes, why he has his insecurities. One of the things that we developed for Dagdan is that he is going through memory loss, and he is in denial about that. And that's a very real thing for me personally. Alzheimer's is in my family, and my grandmother and my mother is actually suffering from it. And so it for me, it is such a challenge to be in a world where you're writing and be writing real life experiences threaded through each of the characters' personalities and backstories. So I can't jump from project to project simultaneously. I have to dedicate time for each one. And when I jump back into another one, like for example, I'm writing novels right now, and for a company here in LA, and I have to devote time to get into that science fiction world, how the aliens work, all of their powers or similarities to humans. And then with another game project I'm working on, I have to jump into kind of a Wild West fantastical world where how would these characters talk if it was more of a Western setting and no holds barred type of a thing. So it's such a great question. The answer is I have to do it carefully, meticulously, and I have to carve out time for each project. And I cannot leave my chair when I've decided, like, okay, from 2 to 6, this is Ari time, and I'm chained. I can't move. And the next week, this is novel time, and I'm chained and I can't move. So I have to balance it very carefully, but also loyally. Like, I have to be loyal to that project for that set of time.
Sebastian, same for you. I know you're working on, you got some other games in the pipeline now, or has Ari been an only focus for you? Or during the time you're working on that, how are you juggling that with other projects you might be working on?
Well, for Ari, it did not happen. For my previous game, it was actually quite an issue because I still had my previous job when I was working in like user profiling and marketing, and at the same time, I was working also on Afterloop, and that was really complicated to maintain. Especially, it was like half of the week was for the game, and half of the other week was for marketing and so on. I had like a lot of issue to follow it up on that. For Ari, we had like I was like full time on it, and I didn't had any client work on the side or anything like that. And right now, I'm also continuing on developing the Ari franchise, and also the how to say that, also following up on people having issue with the game, and yeah, and basically helping the people to go buy the game.
We talked a little already about how you created some of the different seasons and some of the different looks, but there's also different enemies that come into play for each of the seasons. How did you kind of decide, and is that a combination of the writing and the developing, kind of how those enemies were going to interact with those different seasons?
Well, that arrived way earlier before GENESE arrived, and the choice of the enemies is that I wanted to have the game that will before all audience. So first it was like no blood and no human that you hit that you hit, and so we ended up by having to choose between different set of animals. And at that time we had other friends that were working on another game that had already a set of animals that they choose, and we're like, okay, we're gonna choose a different set of animal, because at first I wanted to have foxes, I wanted to have other kind of like European type of animals basically, and all of those were taken already. So we had to come up with something else, and that's why we ended up by having hyenas and boar, and what else do we have in the game? Sheep also, and bulls and such. So that was really to differentiate ourselves from other games that had a different set of enemies. And yeah, we kept on having just like either like elementals enemies or animal based enemies.
And that was one of the things that we were able to talk about from the story perspective.
Yeah.
Why did the sheep people all of a sudden come into an existence? And again, we were able to squeeze in some of that lore through the journal letters that you can. I think they're pretty difficult to get, so you got to make the extra effort, right, Seb? I think you made them
Yeah.
pretty hard to find, but come on, players, I know you can do it. It's worth it. It's worth it. But we're able to kind of breadcrumb what GENESE, they would say, geez, why did that happen, right? That's one of the things that as a writer you are up against. You have to try to puzzle piece, hey, this is in the game, backtrack on why do you think that happened, and explain it plausibly, like how could that, well, in a fantasy world, so I mean it's not like realistic believable, but you know what I'm saying.
But even in a fantasy world, we are actually also treating on some real stuff. Like for example, with the sheep in the game, they are a victim of racism, and we have even a quest that is like mentioning that.
That's a really great point. It was cool to keep the game rooted in reality so that we can really hit on points that we all feel as humans, and we all go through bullying or trauma or abuse or like you said, racism, or feelings of isolation. Especially this is the year, right, that we can talk about feeling isolated. Good. So yeah, so that was
Rated E10 for ages 10.
a bright spot in the fact that I really like bringing to the table a point in every story where we can pause as the viewer, as the reader, as the player, and go, wow, that has exactly happened to me, or that has happened to my best friend or my sister, and have that moment of pause. That to me is really important in all mediums of storytelling, is to bring something to the table that makes us pause or evolve in some way. And you're right, Seb, that was really cool to bring, even though it's a fantasy world with animals that can talk, we brought this level of realism that I'm really proud of in the limited time, limited budget that we had.
Yeah.
And I guess along those lines, Janice, what perspective then as a woman in the industry do you bring to Ari, I guess specifically, and to game writing in general?
Well, for sure. I think a really proud moment, I think that all of us can, as women, can talk about, is the feeling that we had when we watched Wonder Woman on the screen, on the big screen. I think I'm tearing up just thinking about it, because it really was awesome to sit there in the theater and have this powerful wave of emotions, to see these bands of women be so powerful and confident and be able to face any type of conflict or challenge. It was overwhelming. And I didn't feel that back in 2010 when I was writing, The Holder's Dominion, which is about this girl that goes head to head with a hacker. And the evolution that we've had in every industry across all entertainment mediums, I think, is fantastic, as showcasing female heroes in new ways. I think we're really making incredible strides, and I think it's very validating and rewarding to feel. And I can say also, especially having a daughter, my 5-year-old Cora, I used a lot of inspiration having a daughter for Ari, because I was able to write in this childlike, innocent manner for Ari, taking real threads from my own little one, and the way that she talks and asks questions, but also has this innocent sense of humor. Like, I never imagined before I was a parent that a child could have this just knack for being silly and funny. It's something that you discover as a parent, I think. And so I used that to infuse into Ari, where she is bold and a little bit spunky and stubborn, but also innocent and likable and lovable, and you want to root for her. So I absolutely use real life experiences through my own experience with my daughter for Ari, for sure.
And along the lines of that with the character, in the trailer, Ari starts with this long kind of flowing hair, and it gets stuck in the wall, and she cuts all her hair off.
For
Why
sure.
does she do that? I guess it's for both of you. And is that become part of the personality moving forward?
Well, originally, I wanted to have a character that you could not say its gender. So I really wanted not to focus on that, but to really have, like, first of all, Ari is a kid. She's not a boy, she's not a girl, she's just a kid. And that was like the original plan that I wanted to have. Then with the hair, we went into a lot of discussion with that, because it was quite complicated to bring in. And well, at the end of the day, I don't know if you want to explain more, Janice, about that, or if I should continue, or
I know, I love where you're going. I mean, you're
oh yeah.
absolutely right. I love that you wanted to bring to the table, something very specific with your vision. And when you brought me on, I wanted to fulfill that and bring your vision to life as best I could. And so when we talked about how Ari, it's almost like, in the spirit of Mulan, right? Where in Mulan, she wants to step into the role for her father, and she has to kind of don that masculine presence. It was the same way for Ari, where I was inspired by the fact that she cuts her hair, and we played with all different reasonings. Like, if you notice in the game, her mom has a similar little cute little fly ups of her hair, and we came with all kinds of backstory options where she painted like an homage to her mother, or looking like her brother, or stepping in a role for her father. But for me, I ran with the idea, Seb, that you had, that this was stepping into the spirit of when adventure calls, pants is the way to go.
Yeah.
Or cutting your hair. It's not, it doesn't have to be a symbol of a girl or a boy, right? It's just
Yeah.
something that you can do on a whim and cut because you are feeling, that you need to change. So I love that just neutral stance of a certain attribute doesn't have to define a woman or a man. And I ran with the idea that the spirit of this game is family and bonding and stepping in for those who you love who are struggling. And I love that Ari has this call to action that, look, her brother is gone, presumed dead, the family is in mourning, and she wants to know why. But because her parents are trying to shield her and protect her, they don't want to talk about, the fact that her brother was reported dead and etc. So they glaze over it. Look, your brother is gone, just deal with it, Ari, we have to move on, is kind of their approach. But I wanted to highlight, Seb, what you wanted, which was a call for togetherness, for bringing together the roots of what this world should be, which is we look out for each other.
Yeah, one of the fun thing with the haircutting is that in the mind of Ari, she's like transforming herself into her brother. But actually, whenever you're walking around in the game, nobody take it in consideration. It's like for her, it's a big deal, but for nobody else in the game, it is a big deal. It's just like, oh, you cut your hair. Well,
Exactly. I'm so
yeah.
glad you brought that up. She traditionally, the role of guardians is for the father to pass down to the son. So apprentices are always sons and guardians are always the father figures of a father role. And so I love that you mentioned that, because she does think, I'll disguise myself as Flynn and no one will know. And in her innocence, that makes sense. And I could totally vouch for that, because my daughter Cora will be like, yeah, you won't notice that I did this, right? I'm smiling from ear to ear, but I really did not touch that cookie or whatever it is. And so for Ari, it's like, I'm gonna wear Flynn's clothes, I'm gonna cut my hair, I'm gonna look just like him. But everyone, like you said, Seb, is like, oh, Ari, you cut your hair, or Ari, well, you look different today, or you look happy or cheery. And she's like, all right, well, that idea is out of the window. Oh, Ari, you cut your hair, or
Esteban Castro wants to know, and you alluded to this earlier, Genese, is there going to be a part 2?
I love that you asked that, because I very much hope so, because again, we have so much lore and backstory that we created for the game that we weren't able to squeeze in. We have plenty to fit into a TV show, for a movie, for a sequel. So I personally hope so, for sure.
Well, I cannot say more than Janice. I think it's I would be very excited to do a part 2 or a part 3 or part 5, but it's also all linked to whether the player will like the game, will enjoy it. So yeah, that's very much up to the fan.
It's really hard we have to be vague purposefully about the story, because we don't want to give, there are twists and turns in the story, and there are things that you discover that we don't want to give away. So when enough time has passed, please let us, discuss all the reveals, all the spoilers. In fact, Seb and I talked about that on my podcast. We had a version 1, and then we're going to have a 2.0 version where we discuss, all the reasons why we decided for story wise, why did this character end up doing this, or ended up lying or deceiving or becoming this, or really was secretly this. So we have to be vague, because I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Before we go, we'll give you guys one more chance to kind of tell everyone like where they can get the game and just kind of last things. But we did want to do some giveaways of codes. We just want to take the best questions that we got. And we got a lot of good questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everyone's questions, but if you are Ben Park, or if you are the Pumpkin Geek, or if you are Esteban Castro, or you are Francois Gourmet, or you are Genie 4, any of the 5 of you, go ahead and email us, connect with me, pr@wizardworld.com, pr@wizardworld.com. And those 5 winners, we will get you a special code. You can download the PC version of the game. Also had a question from Valivant. She wanted to know, Valivant, he or she wanted to know if there's any downloadable content available, and that can lead into you guys talking about where the best place is to connect if you're interested in this game.
So the downloadable content, we don't have any planned yet. But for instance, the next update will feature the long hair for Ari, or is like featuring new stuff within the game. And like the best way to connect with us is directly on our Discord. So you can do like discord.ari-game.com, and you will just be able to enter the Discord.
And you
Excellent.
can
Excellent.
find I'll do a quick shout out. That's okay. See, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. You can
Oh, you
find
got them?
Ari. Look
There
at
they
that.
are.
You can find Ari on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. So, I mean, come on. I had to, right, Seb? There's nothing like the physical copy of a book. There's nothing like the physical copy of a game. It's just so tangible.
I haven't seen them yet.
Oh my goodness! See, good thing I did that
Right.
then. Yeah.
No, but I've seen them on
Oh,
I've seen them on Twitter or such, but I didn't saw them physically yet. So for me,
oh.
they don't exist yet.
This is why it's so important. We got to hang on to physical copies. It's just
Yeah.
awesome. But I'm old school. But yeah, you can find Discord is great. Modus
And
Games,
Twitter.
Maximum Games, and Exon. I think they're doing a fantastic job, like keeping everyone updated with all of the patches and updates that are happening with the game. And you can find me at janicedavis.com. Everyone thinks my name is with a J because it sounds like a J, but it's with a G. I try to be on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I'm getting better. My natural instinct is to read and write and stay. I don't have a draw to online presence, but I'm trying. And of course, please play Ari. I think it's such a cool, unique, and fun, sweet game.
Now, we haven't announced this yet, but Janice, you're going to be back with us on Sunday, October 4th. We're going to have 3 of the voice actors from the game: Chris Zambellis, Kira Buckland, Casey Mungillo. Look for that on Wizard World Virtual soon on how to link up to that. But that date at 1 o'clock Pacific time, 4 o'clock Eastern, you'll be back with us hosting that panel. Just give us it'll give us another perspective on this game, and that's the voice actors, which we didn't even really get to in this time.
Exactly. I think that's going to be cool because we can showcase how they brought every line to life and how they felt, the medium balanced all the cutscenes and the gameplay and the lore and the story. I think that interview will be a lot of fun. So yeah, for sure.
So in preparation for that, everyone who's watching needs to go get the game, play the game, be ready, and come back on the 4th when we have that panel. Listen, Sebastian, Janice, thank you so much for being with us on Wizard World Virtual Experiences today. I'll remind everyone that we have some upcoming events on Wizard World Virtual Experiences the next few days. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern time, we'll have Back to the Future with Claudia Wells and James Tolkien. Thursday, we're going to have the Legends of Rock and Roll, the great Mary Wilson and the Ramones. On Friday, it's the movie Escape to Witch Mountain back from the 70s. Janice, you should show that one to Cora. It's just she's just old enough
for her
to like Escape to Witch Mountain from the 1970s. It's on Disney Plus. We'll have that Friday at 1 o'clock. You can learn about that and all of the other scheduled events at wizardworldvirtual.com. For Sebastian and Janice, I'm Jerry Milani. Thanks so much for joining us today on Wizard World Virtual Experiences. We'll see you again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.